September board will come back into order in public session.
Yes, back into regular session.
Okay, first item on the open session agenda, item 6, is public comment period. And Libby, we have anybody signed up?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then we'll go to item 7, presentation discussion of the update and report by the Director of Electric Utilities or his designee regarding customer service, business center practices, procedures and policies, customer operations and complaints, billing forms and procedures, and LB&L staffing and performance. Mr. McCollum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll hit the high points in the report, and get staff here that can try to respond to any questions that you might have on the written materials. But on page 9, you can see a lot of the news coverage that was around the open houses that was held on August 26th and 29th. We had pretty good media coverage of that. A lot of Facebook and Twitter traffic on those as well. At the last city council meeting on the workshop portion of it, we had a presentation. I don't know if any of y'all had to see that or not, but we went through a lot of information about what the open houses covered. And, you know, on Saturday we had about 20 citizens. On the Tuesday night we had about 44. I know some of the board members were there, and some of the council members as well. We had all the utilities represented there. The busiest traffic areas, I think, were the rates area, both for electric and water and wastewater rates. Meter reading was a big big draw. We had a display set up there where folks could look at a water meter that had dirt in there and everything. So we had a demonstration of how you clean the dirt off and spray it so that you can read the meter. We had our electric meters there as well. And how you read one with binoculars if you need to. So hopefully the customers were able to gain some confidence that we can read meters got dirt on it. We also had folks there that were talking about ways to save and efficiency measures. And the water department had a really good demonstration there for identifying leaking toilets and the ways that you can do that. I really enjoyed that demonstration myself. Irrigation folks were there to show folks how to set their controller and talk about best ways to use your irrigation system. We had customer service terminals set up where people that had specific questions about their bill could sit down with their CSRs. They could look up their bill and try to answer their questions at the time. We did have some follow-up activities as well where we needed to do some additional work after the fact. So, yes, sir.
On page 12, under reactions, can you tell me what ha-ha is to us?
Is that people laughing about it?
It's sarcasm.
We got 6 that are angry.
Yeah. And that's been fairly typical the last few months. I mean, you put out information that's intended to be helpful and useful to customers, and they take offense to it because they think we're insulting them.
I'll give Don some training on emojis. And
Can you include me in that?
yeah. Might want to post that one.
Does it take a phone to do it, or what?
Just talk.
You can't do it with a flip phone.
Or an abacus?
So anyway, all in all, I think the open houses were good. We did learn some things. I think we're going to try to have some more of these maybe in the spring and the fall. The planning table that I was at didn't get a whole lot of traffic, so we'll probably, folks seem more interested in the immediate problems that they were dealing with, not worried so much about what was happening down the road. So we probably eliminate that and maybe put some more people at Andy's table because he had a line there for a while. And the Saturday event didn't draw as many as the weeknight event, so we'll probably try to have it during the weeknight.
Mr. McCall, I'd just like to, on behalf of the council, I'd like to thank you and your team for doing a great job.
Thank you.
We had a chance to hear from you and thank you guys at the council meeting. But in front of your board, I think it's important for them to hear how pleased I think the council was with the way not only LP&L but all the city utilities represented themselves. It was your folks did a great job. I really enjoyed getting to meet some of your people, and I thought they did a wonderful job. I think it surprised our citizens. Not only the interactive, whether it be what they did with the toilets or the reading the water meter, but the fact that you could come in and they could pull your information up and look at your billing. I thought that was for your utility billing in any sort. I just thought it was well done. And I think I really was pleased to hear you and Mr. Atkinson talk about how we do this in the future, just to continue to show, we're trying to educate, we're trying to drive awareness, and we're trying to continue, we serve, and we really don't exist without those customers, and that's who they are. And so I really applaud you guys for stepping up in that regard.
Thank you for saying that, Mayor. And I should have said the other day at the council meeting, but I think Matt Rose deserves a lot of credit for organizing this and getting all the materials ready and really thinking through. And of course, the folks that came down in Austin did a lot of background work for us as well. But Matt did a good job setting it all up to get ready to go. We had a lot of volunteer staff that was there. The hourly folks got paid, the hourly folks didn't. But we had a lot of folks that were willing to come in on the evenings and on Saturday to help us out. Jamie and her folks in there, they did a great job setting up tables and routing people to the right tables and some friendly faces that meet the customers. Ms. Healy?
I think I was going to say the same thing. It's a great thing to do because frequently here from the city, help you out, I don't care, they never listen to you, which is ridiculous. But when people can actually see people and actually understand better how these things work,
We're going to try to do it. The idea, I think, going forward is to do it in the spring before we get into the summer months and try to really focus more, maybe more so than we did this time, on the efficiency things that you can do to reduce your usage and monitor your usage during the summertime so that you don't get surprise bills. And talk more about the levelized bill, the budget billing program that we've got. There's still people that don't know much about that, even though it's really a good way to even your cost out for the year so that you don't get high bills, rate shock in the summertime.
I just wanted to second what the mayor said too. The biggest part, I thought, was the statement, having a station, so when someone came, they could just go to the area where they had some concern. Unlike, they don't have to wait and listen to a lot of things. They can be careful.
All right, let's see, other things.
One question.
That's Jordan.
We're moving to the same rate here.
Right.
How are we communicating that to the customer? Expecting to see if it's going to happen and somebody, you get the winter months and they're going to say, well, wait a minute, last year it was only X. Are we getting that communicated out to everybody so they understand what we're doing? We talk about it this weekend,
Right.
but I'm talking about that sooner.
Have we put anything on Facebook?
No, and we will. The biggest thing that we're going to have to talk a lot about is come springtime, reinforce the consumption message. One of the hardest things that we deal with going back 4 years doing this is not when we head into the winter months, because not just for us, but for co-ops and utilities around the state, with everybody's consumption coming down in the wintertime, the engagement goes way down. It's when you come back in the spring months and the summer and you get that summer rate coming in. And so we're going to be focusing a lot on, what our rate is, but also the importance of watching your consumption. One of the hardest things that we've had to do is get out there, and I typically do a lot of media where I say every single year our customers are going to see their consumption either double or triple as we go from May to June to July. But then trying to explain on top of that a winter and summer rate really hurts. And so this year it's going to be a lot more effective to be able to say to the vast majority of our customers, watch your consumption and watch how that drives the increasing cost on your bill, because we no longer have that step up So I'm excited about being able to push that message, but we're gonna be doing a lot more communicating through the, end of winter, into the spring, in terms of, what you can be doing to prepare. To David's point about doing the open house in the spring, really want to drive home a message of, handing out packets for folks that say, this is how you can make your home more efficient. I know that we saw this summer in kind of the heat of all the controversy, folks getting annoyed with us by pushing a energy efficiency message, but I think we still need to continue to put that out there, because that is the driver, especially now that there's one levelized rate. So it's going to be really important to reinforce that.
Mr. Conrad?
Matt, is there somewhere on the bill where we could, send that message out that there is a rate change in what we're doing in the winter months?
There's not currently, we can do an insert. That's a separate piece of communication. And typically, we put an insert in the bill every single month.
Just thinking out loud, wouldn't that be more beneficial than having that sticker shock once you get your bill and it's you
Right.
getting out in front of?
Right. Now, Andy will talk here in a little bit about as we make this transition. In terms of the overall effective rate, everybody's rate's going to be going down going into next month. It's not going down as much as it has in the past, but it will be going down. As we move over to Cupra as well, we're going to have the ability also to do on-certs.
Right.
One of the issues with inserts, we do them because it's the one way that we can touch every single customer every month. But a lot of times those get thrown to the side. I think the idea is that with the on-certs, it's more visible, it's right there, it's right underneath that section that you're looking at for electricity, and I think that's going to be a really key component for education going forward.
Right.
We'll certainly try to get the word out there. I think the fact that usage is falling in the fall instead of increasing in the summer, folks don't notice their bills because the magnitude is so much lower. So I really don't think we're going to get a lot of people that notice the rate change going into the fall and the winter months like they notice the big increase in the summertime, which is really related to usage more so than the rate.
I believe, Mr. McCall and Mr. Atkinson, I believe that this new billing cycle, which we'll see beginning, next week, is that right? Is that when we start to see the City of Lubbock Utilities invoice?
No, that's been delayed at least a month, so we're looking to.
Okay, no, wait, so that's a classic example. As of last week, it hadn't been delayed. We're talking about it. How am I supposed to know that?
Well, as of Friday, we had one of our key individuals that resigned from their position, and so that's put a delay that's just happened as of last Friday. So it is new information.
So one person leaving delays that.
Because they had the entire project.
So we got email, I got phone, I'm tethered to this thing. Come on, we got to communicate.
Well, Mayor,
I know, but we've been telling people that, David. I
Mayor,
publicly have told people that, based upon, we talked about it at our council meeting last week. When you were there, right?
I was there.
We talked about it publicly, right?
But we were working on trying to keep this individual as late as yesterday.
That's fine, but once they're gone, let's put something out so we know about it.
I don't have a hard date that I can put out there yet. That's what Andy and JD have been working through. I completely understand.
Okay, I'm just gonna vent for a minute, okay? But any organization should bus-proof any person. David, Matt, Chad, Andy, if they get run over by a bus today, somebody should be able to step in. All right? Any organization. You got 5 people, you got 75, you got 250. That's just how we have to operate. And when we talk about something publicly, that affects all of our credibility. And I guess it hits me the hardest because I'm the guy who happens to be at the top of the list. And I understand losing people, and I understand you trying, and that's not your criticism about that. It's just about, if that's going to be the case, then we need a little 911 on it. Even if as much as, hey, we potentially have a problem, okay? I guess we do have a problem now, but my point, so next month when we roll it out, let's use that as an opportunity to start maybe changing the way we communicate, and let's think through what we're going to put from a stuffer standpoint going forward. And let's make sure we communicate. Because those people that do compare their bills, and there are those out there, you know, my guess is Mr. Taylor has a spreadsheet where he compares his bills. I mean, people of his ilk often do. Let's make sure that they understand what's going on, right? Lecture over. Sorry.
But what I heard Matt say is he didn't have a hard day.
You know, we're still sorting through this, and the problem with a big change like what we're talking about making is that you don't want to roll out a program that's budget. And this is the guy that's leaving is the guy that's going to do all the testing on it. So we would much rather take the licks for a delay than rolling out a project that's not active, that's not sending out correct bills, that's got information wrong on the bills. It's got to be tested, and it's got to be tested thoroughly before we can roll out a project that we're comfortable with. It's my fault, blame me. But, you know, we're not going to roll out something that's not tested and working.
Well, and these will be the ones that say seal level utilities and it's just a different communication.
And the outsourced, it's going to be involved the outsourced bill credit. So we're going to keep doing things the way we've been doing them until we make sure that the guts stay.
Well, and I think just kind of go back to the whole forward-facing, customer-oriented approach. Whatever y'all are planning as far as public open houses and all that stuff, we need to be proactive in planning those and scheduling them and making sure that we're in front of folks. And I understand y'all had a lengthy discussion about that last month, and that in my opinion, I'll just say, I think it would be a useful investment if we did have some involvement with paid media to transmit that message. That's my personal.
We did a paid media push for these two open houses. Given the short nature of it, that's one of the comments that we got back on the negative side of the equation is, you know, more advanced warning. And so what you would do for a spring push is just do that same media purchase, but a longer period of time, just re-emphasize and a lot of social media around it well ahead of time, so folks can be prepared for it.
I wonder if there's not a way to do something that people could anticipate, like always do it on the solstice or something, you know, like a quarterly meeting, so you know, I've got a problem with like
When the season changes.
and I can kind of know that I can show up and talk to people, so I'd rather die than have to tell somebody to talk. So, you know, if there was something that was just routine, that all of you knew that every quarter you were gonna have an opportunity to have a meeting or something, so you didn't have to necessarily advertise it heavily, but it could just be part of it. This is coming up.
I think that's exactly what we need to do. And as I mentioned the board last month, and I mentioned the council this past week, you know, if we follow the model of the co-ops that have an annual meeting, so something is set in stone, to your point, I think people can put it on their calendars, and if we do it twice a year, they know with a certain level of specificity when that date's gonna be, and they can expect it. And that's the biggest thing, to have them to where they expect to have that open house.
We need door prizes.
Mr. Chairman, the way it works now, they come to city council,
Right.
and then you all get stuck, usually with somebody in the hallway. Really not which work.
Well, it was interesting, the meeting, whenever that was, the meeting of the fellow that started the
First meeting in August.
Yeah. And they talked about deregulation, which understanding the industry, ERCOT and SPP, I mean, there's a huge ignorance right there. But then to go to segue from electricity immediately to wishing there was competition for water, and just sort of, what do you do?
We had a discussion with them about that.
Yeah.
Well, the lady that came that evening complained about her water bill because for swimming.
For swimming, yeah. Right.
We did find out after really working with her that she has a serious irrigation.
Yeah.
And the gentleman that you're speaking of that started this,
Yeah.
they had a 12 leak, which could be 7,000 gallons.
If they use those little things that you put in there, like I did, and tested mine out,
Yeah.
Those are, if you use those, they don't know. They'd come to, if he'd have shown up, he'd have gotten some of those at the open house.
Well, and I think we just need to be cognizant of all the things that touch our citizens and that they are our customers, and that we're thinking ahead about how that's going to impact them and communicate those things to them, so that y'all don't have to be.
Well, the problem is we're ill-equipped to handle it.
Right.
What are we gonna say to them?
We'll look into
Oh,
that.
we'll look into it, or Mr. McCullough's here, or, somebody's here that can talk to. It's not good. To respond to it, I think what they should have done the first place.
Right.
Not a week goes by that I don't get a number of questions. They come generally through a phone call or an email, and the team David's team is very responsive, and we appreciate that very much. And we'll continue to be that way. I mean, it's easier to get to the mayor than it is anybody else.
Yeah.
So goes with the territory or a council person. Our emails are listed there every week in the paper. It's easy to find them. Even those are easy to find on our website. Not much is easy to find, but you can find those. It is true. Go try to find the fire chief's phone number. Okay? Pretty hard to do. In fact, you can't find it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kelly, I think it kind of.
Yeah, I was just hitting the highlights. So I did want to point out on page 17, we've had a number of major commercial projects that have been completed now. If you look at the highlighted projects there on page 17, you'll see that 717 new apartment units are now, can be occupied. That's overnight addition of potential 717 customers. 107 motel rooms have been added. And then, of course, the TPU Sports Performance Center, which is a huge addition to the campus there. And, so there's some good things happening. That's really all I wanted to comment on, unless y'all have any questions.
Any other questions for Dave on the director's report? Thank you, Dave. We'll go then to item number 8, presentation discussion of financial and capital statements, financing options, audits, and financial policies of Logan Fire and Life relating to debt issuance issues, reserve account funding, cost allocation, revenue and expense projections, purchase power cost recovery factor, and customer metering, billing, and service issues. Bertrand.
All right. First few slides for the financial presentation today is related to the average bill for a rate 1 commercial customer, or residential customer using 1,000 kilowatt hours a month. You can see LPNL in July was $119.44. If you look at SPS, the Amarillo customers, July were at $123.17. As you can see over the time frame illustrated on the chart, that the LPNL customers saved $229 compared to the average residential customer in Amarillo. And then if you look at our survey average for the utilities that we survey across the state, in July that rate was, or that bill would have been about $112 for the average customer. So at this time below LPNL and SPS, but still over the time frame represented here, about $255 of savings for the LP&L customer compared to the survey average. The portion of this presentation that I'm going to dwell on today is the purchase power recovery factor. As you know, the tariff states that every season that we bring this to you to let you know what the change will be on there. It does not require your approval. It is a rate that we have identified that needs to be implemented to recover our costs. The purchase power rate is basically a rate that generates enough revenues to cover our purchase power costs that we purchase from SPS. Again, the tariff requires that those rates are adjusted seasonally on October 1 and on June 1. So we're coming up on October 1, and these new rates will be implemented then. One thing that was put into place in December of 2013 was rate stabilization. Historically, the monthly purchase power costs were passed directly on to our customers, and it created a substantial amount of volatility from month to month. Customers didn't really know what the rate was going to be next month, and it was very difficult to manage your home budget. And so one of the things that the board and the council did at that time was to put in place rate stabilization, which basically LP&L takes on that volatility rather than the customer. And that's been in place and I think has been very successful since 2013. As part of the rate stabilization, the board and council authorized a reserve of $3.5 million that was set aside to help absorb that volatility on those months when our costs exceeded the revenues coming in from our customers related to the purchase power. So this is a little bit of a primer on Pastor. Y'all have heard this time and time again, but I know it's probably nice to have a recap every year or every season when we talk about it. What I want to focus on at this point is the right axis, which is the monthly over or under collection. And so the green line going across on a monthly basis would be where we'd be evenly collected, where those revenues would match our power costs, which is just impossible to do in reality. So on a monthly basis, if the graph is above that green line, that meant our revenues exceeded our costs, and vice versa, below that line, our costs exceeded our revenues. So here you can see where the actual pass-through effect has been on a monthly basis since we implemented this. And so you can see the type of volatility that our customers historically had experienced would be very much like this, all over the place. So you can see, again, those months where it's above that green line, we had higher revenues than costs. When it was below that line, our costs exceeded our revenues. Moving on, now focus on the left-hand side of the left axis. That is a cumulative value. So we track this cumulatively over time. We don't look at it on a monthly snapshot because we've implemented the stabilization. So again, from the zero line up to $3.5 million is that rate stabilization reserve that was set aside to absorb those times where our costs exceeded our revenues. The board and council approved an upper bound, which is 5% of our annual purchase power cost. So that's a moving target. So if our cumulative revenues exceed our cost by more than that upper bound, then we would be coming back to the board to ask for a mid-season adjustment, reduce that rate, and get our collections back within the bound. We also have a lower bound, which is a zero mark, after you've eaten through that $3.5 million of reserves. And again, at that point, if you fall below that black line, we would be coming back to the board and say either we need a rate or we feel like the rate we have in place today will get us back to where we need to be. So we have some boundaries that we operate within, and we have reported to you as required by the tariff on a monthly basis. And so this next chart looks more familiar to you. This is where we've been on a cumulative basis from month to month over the last several years. So you can see in these three areas we were outside of those bounds, outside of that lower bound and outside of that upper bound. Back in 2014, we came to the board and said, yes, we are outside of that bound. However, the rate we have in place, our models anticipate that we will be back up within those bounds over a number of months. So we didn't recommend a rate change at that point in time, and we didn't. So it actually ended up correcting itself. Then we get to February of 2016, we had accumulated quite an overcollection at that point in time. The rates were set at a level where we were exceeding our cost by a good margin. And so in February, we did come to the board in February of 16, and we had stated that we needed to have a reduction in that pass-through rate, which the board approved at that point in time. And so you can see shortly thereafter that overcollection amount reduced back into within those bounds. What we didn't anticipate was in July of 16, and in June, we were here, our models had predicted we would collect a little over $2 million, so we would have been right here in July of 2016. But we got a true-up from Excel, which brought us down to about 3.9. This was a true-up that was unexpected. We'd had a cooler summer in 2015, which did not allow SPS to pass through as many costs, were unable to cover their costs as they might normally do. So they passed a pretty large true-up across all of their wholesale customers, which then brought us well below that. Really, from that time on, we've had difficulty rebounding from that. In September of 2016, we had about $500,000 of an unexpected fuel cost adjustment. In October of 16, we had about a $1.1 million Z2 charge that was unexpected. In November and December, we had about $2.8 million worth of congestion charges that were unexpected. So we continued to kind of get beaten up, and that cumulative collection amount fell down. So in February of 17, a year after the board reduced the rate, we came back to the board and asked for an increase. And so that occurred in February of this year when we had to increase that pass-through rate. You see over time, we haven't made a lot of improvement, and we haven't gotten within those bounds very quickly. Our models, the way they work, you really caught up the most in the summer months. It was going to be a slow catch-up, and you can see, there's a slight, improvement over time. But here we had another surprise $1.1 million charge from SPS that, again, was another true-up based on their annual costs. And so we've continued to have these surprises.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
So we anticipate the true-up in July. We expected about 1.4 million, and it came in at 2.5. So it's not that we're not accounting for it; it just continues to be higher than anticipated.
So we have been in this situation, for a number of months. Now, I came to you, the last couple of months we talked about it. Is the rate where we are today? Is it? Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, and you may cover this, but just looking at page 22, I was going to ask the question. I don't know if this has something to do with what you're talking about, but for July 2017, it was about $29 million for charges on the services, and then which is roughly 22% higher than last year, but yet there's a huge difference in over-under collection on that. Is that due to the congestion Z2 and true-up?
An over-under collection, we intended to be over-collected in this month, but we weren't.
And that's exactly what you're talking about?
Yes.
Gotcha.
One thing our models did predict, though, was that we would have some pretty substantial overcollections. So I'm going to overlay, this is that monthly line I showed you before. You'll see in August we had a substantial overcollection of a little over $2 million. So we have as our models, and that was right where our model it said it would do. So we chewed into that under collection a good amount in August. At this point in time, I'll move to the next slide. In our model for our pass-through, we are projecting at this time that we'll be under-collected about $4.8 million at the end of this fiscal year. That's where we are today. Now, there's a chance that we would have an over-collection in September, but with the cooler temperatures, we are being somewhat conservative in not altering our forecast. So we're expecting to remain about $4.8 million. If you remember, we began the year under-collected about $6 million, so there's a slight improvement over the year. That's where so that's a number that we need to collect in the next season. We're also are anticipating a large true-up from Excel this next year. Again, it has to do with the cooler summer temperatures. They have fixed charges, and the way they collect those revenues to cover those charges is volumetric charges, and volumes are down. So that we're anticipating that they will have another large trip like we did in 2015. So we've modeled in an additional about $4.1 million for a true-up cost that will be throughout the fiscal year of 17-18. Also, we're anticipating our purchase power costs will be greater than the prior year. Our capacity charges continue to go up pretty dramatically, about $3.7 million of higher charges for next year, and then transmission charges as well have a pretty good size increase over time. So you can see that there are a number of issues that we're dealing with as far as the pass-through portion of our rates. So let me kind of show you where we've been. Back in 2016, at the beginning of 2016, you see a pretty low rate. Remember, this is when we had all that over collection and we came to the board in January, and so we dropped the pass-through rate pretty dramatically in February of that year. That rate really continued through the end of the summer. This goes up because of the energy piece of the rate, the base rate that goes up in the summer, at least historically went up. So over this period of time, we were under-collecting, and we knew we were going to under-collect there. We get back to our normal rates basically after, really, I would consider that more of a rebate over that time period, because we knew that that rate that was set was under-collecting what our cost would be. So we get back to normal here. We've had a few bumps here. Most of this increase here was related to the energy charge for the summer as the winter-summer charge changes. So currently we're at the 119.44. So I recommend, and then overlay the natural gas prices, which correlate very highly with our purchase power costs. And you can see, we were $2.29 in 15-16. In 16-17, we're at $3.02, so over 30% increase in natural gas. It's up a little bit, about 10% for our forecast for next year, but it has moderated somewhat. So, all of that said, what we're projecting our average customer bill to be in the winter season would be $116.46. That is lower than what they're paying in the summer. You'll see in the breakdown below, the pass-through is up slightly, about 1.6% increase on the pass-through from 73.38 to 74.58. The big drop, though, is our energy rate. We're going from that summer rate to our new annual energy rate, which is about a 12% decrease. So overall, the average customer that uses 1,000 kilowatt hours would see about a 2.5% decrease, even though we are setting a rate that will collect that shortfall in our pass-through. The overall customer will see a decline. And I know, and we all know, that the average customer doesn't use 1,000 kilowatt hours every month. So I said, okay, well, let me look at what does the average customer really use on a month-to-month basis. And so if you look at a customer in September of every year, they use about 1,243 kilowatt hours. So on the old rates, on the current rates that we have in place today, that 1,243 kilowatt hours would generate a bill of about $146. The average customer in October uses about 900 kilowatt hours, so it's a 330 kilowatt hour drop from month to month. And under the new rates, that would account to about $106 for their monthly bill. So that would be about a $40 drop for the average residential rate 1 customer going from September to October. Most of that driven by their consumption patterns, but also a lot of that to deal with that energy rate that's dropping. So overall, first time we've seen some relief for our customers, even though we have a good bit of pass-through charges that we need to collect to become even again there. I am pleased to say that we're offering some relief. We'd like to offer more, but we do feel that based on our models, by the end of May, we will be evenly collected if everything holds true, which we know it won't. But I think we have some conservatism in our models. We are learning that Excel is very difficult to forecast, but we're doing the best we can. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you can expect as of October 1st when those statements start going out then. We should start seeing a lot of relief from our customers, both from a rate and from their consumption patterns changing as well. So that's,
Andy, where does the 5% increase in the base rate?
well,
That's in, is it the energy piece?
yeah, it's in these two sections. You know, the 769 to 807 is a 5%. Remember though, this is a blend of a summer and a winter rate. So if you took the summer and energy rates last year compared to this average, you'd see a 5% difference.
Okay.
Yes.
I couldn't get that to work in my head.
Does Excel work with us? I mean, do they try to help us forecast this?
They share a good deal of information with us, you know, after they surprise us with a big bill. And, you know, they do give us a heads up sometimes of things coming. We have consultants that we have, that WTMPA has hired to review these issues that come up, because we want to make sure that they're following their tariff from, you know, FERC-approved tariff, and making sure that they're not sending anything through that's inappropriate. It's justified. They have combed through everything that they can and reviewed that. I don't know if, Chad, you have anything to add to that, but...
No, I mean, they do a fuel cost adjustment that they send us an estimate before, you know, so there's a 2-month lag on the fuel true-up, and they send us their estimates as they have them, and we plug them in to the model when we get them. But it's always on a lag, so it's not overly helpful.
But these annual true-ups are always a surprise. They hold meetings for all their wholesale customers. They get us all together. They go through all the issues of why this happened and why that happened, and this is why, you know, everyone's getting a substantial charge on their bill next month, you know, and with interest, because, you know, FERC requires, allows them to collect interest on these true-ups, so we kind of get a double whammy. We don't see it coming, and then we have to pay interest for something, you know, for a period of time. So, you know, they do share the information. They seem to be very open and willing to explain all the details of why everything's happened. It's just usually so far after the fact that it's, you know, you can't really do much about it.
Have we asked them for projections?
Well, they do provide projections, but not really related to these true-ups. We get monthly kind of, you know, forecasts and things, but these annual true-ups that we see usually in the July timeframe are hard for us to forecast or anticipate. You know, it depends on a variety of factors in their own cost structure and what revenues they're seeing. You know, like I mentioned a moment ago, the cooler temperatures are going to result in a larger true-up for us, because they haven't been able to collect all their fixed charges through their volumetric rates over the summer. So we can anticipate that. We just don't know what magnitude it will be. You know, historically, our true-ups were never more than $1 million, $1.5 million, you know, and now all of a sudden we're seeing $4 million true-ups and things that are outside the norm. We didn't used to see the congestion charges that we're seeing now, and a lot of that, you know, has to do with, you know, the growth in eastern New Mexico and West Texas and the oil fields and all that that's gone on over the last several years. And, you know, and so there's just been some factors with this new market, you know, that was put into place in March of 13, I guess, was when the integrated marketplace began. They're still getting, you know, their feet wet. I mean, they're still trying to, you know, really understand this market, and things keep evolving.
And
Mr. Bowman had a question.
Andy, isn't it true, though, that they'll never be able to give you a good projection on this true-up, because they themselves don't know until they know what their load is?
That's exactly right, yes. It's weather-driven, commodity-driven. It's a lot of uncertainty that they necessarily, you know, they're a little bit in a blind as well. But,
So on the 1.4 and 2.5, was that 1.4 that we projected conservative? And it missed by 1.1?
yeah, but outside of so what we had seen before that was anywhere from 800,000 to $1.5 million.
it was $800,000 credit, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
we've had credits before.
We've
on the
seen
true-up.
one credit since but and then we had the anomaly of $4 million, and we thought based on weather projections and, those sorts of things, that it wasn't prudent at that point to put in $4 million into the average of how we came up with that number. And then we get a $2.5 million true up that turns out that we were wrong to not include that.
There is no-
$4.1 million number though. Is that really, really conservative, or is it?
I mean,
becoming
so
high?
basically that's based on the highest one we've seen, which was 2 summers ago, and then, a little bit of inflation factor on it, because that's the highest true up that we've seen, and this summer has been eerily similar to that summer.
So our projections are just on previous
There
true-ups.
there is
That's all
no,
it is.
there is no way that we know of to predict the true ups. I mean, we have a good idea that we know there's a cooler summer, and we know that, from we know that they won't have collected all their fixed charges. But as far as, does it have a correlation with anything, else that we can see? It's very, very difficult for us to get a handle on that,
Yeah,
which
I
is
think
very
at this point,
frustrating.
I just think it's just insane. It's crazy that that's the only way to do it, is just go back over 2 or 3 years and say, well, 4.1 was our highest number, so that's what we're going to plug in.
I agree.
Anything that we can do a regression analysis on, we have built into this model. When we first got the model from consultants, it had a very basic regression that was tied to with the independent variable being the price of natural gas, which is the marginal cost of fuel production. Yeah. But as we've dug further into this, as we've learned, as we've worked through it, we actually have 2 regression models built into this. One is for the fuel, which we have continually updated as we get more data points. It gets refined. But the other part of it is we have actually created a transmission regression, because if you'll recall, and we did it as a result of the congestion that we saw back in the winter. And it's not a 1-for-1. If we see congestion charges, we get some offset with credits based, and David could get into the theory of that a lot better than I could, but we know that happens. And so we actually we created a transmission regression analysis, and then we figured out that some of those congestion credits should actually be in the fuel. And so if you'll remember, during the budget process, transmission was higher, but fuel was lower, and that was a result of having the 2 regression analysis instead of just the 1. So we're not flying completely blind, but we're trying anything that we can come up with statistically and do with a scientific process. We're trying to incorporate into this forecast.
How much of this is like they're charging us for their unused capacity? How much of that is included in this?
It's whatever their embedded costs are, Mr. Chairman. So, their total carrying cost on their generating portfolio, the part that goes to their wholesale customers is allocated amongst all their wholesale customers. And one of the problems is their wholesale customer base is declining, so they're kind of in a bit of a dead spiral, and we're one of the last wholesale customers. And so, as that pool begins to shrink, their allocation becomes more focused on the folks who wants to play.
So it's like if I have a cotton gin, I'm going to charge you more for ginning because more people live.
Right.
So you're going to get to cover the cost of the system, whether you.
That's why the contract that we'll have that begins in 2019 is so much better, because we have predetermined fixed costs month by month, and we'll take out the guesswork. At least on that piece. Now, the other contract on the 170 megawatts will still have that embedded cost structure to some extent.
Andy, do they pass the cost of their administrative costs through to us also?
It's a fully embedded cost. I mean,
So like we're paying for their new building in Amarillo?
absolutely, yes.
Can you show that, can you see the change in rate on that?
I don't know if they throw those numbers in
I'm
there.
about to the point on this where I feel like, we bit down hard, but I'm just not so sure that we don't need to publicly express our concern. I mean, we can't do anything about being in a bad contract. But at what point does the, I mean, how many meetings do we have to take?
It feels like they're afterwards for everything they can get before the meeting.
I don't think there's much of that.
I have a question for Richard. Have you looked at that contract? I know it's old, what was it? What year is it?
2004.
2004. Have you looked at that? I mean, just really look hard at it to see if some way to get it right. You know, we ran into this with Texas Tech, remember, about these true-ups?
Yes, ma'am, we've looked at it really, really hard. And the issue is that it's easy to say that that it basically is a fully embedded cost structure. The devil is in the details that WTK has hired the expert to look at to make sure that all of those costs are properly included vis-a-vis the contract language and the FERC tariff. So I think we're in, and I don't think it's unusual. I think probably, without knowing, I'm going to speak in abject conjecture that.
I know you weren't here.
Right, but most of SBS's wholesale contracts, I would assume that these actually were the good ones, in which you got to enjoy the entire system cost, because you got to enjoy some production, some energy costs that was a lower cost, like coal and things like that. So I think that as aggravating as this is probably a better deal than, well, certainly a better deal than what they proposed post 2019. Not a capacity, but going forward. So I think it's right.
So this expert, do they share this information?
Yes, and they attend the meetings with Excel with us and hear the same things, and they there's question and answers going back and forth between the consultants and Excel, and they're making Excel substantiate a lot of the numbers that they're including in the reports. They're certainly the ones that stand out and look questionable to the consultants, and so there's a lot of back and forth in that before the consultants come back to us and tell us that they are comfortable or not comfortable. And they've contested several things, throughout over the last couple of years. So it's there's a lot of open dialogue.
So when they have contested, how is that result? What was the result?
Well, I don't know. Do you have any specific examples on that?
There hasn't been anything that's moved the needle.
They're tiny. They're tiny things that they've identified so far. I don't know that. I think more often than not, we've gotten clarification from Excel when they've contested. I don't know that there's been a lot of value that we've achieved through that question, other than we just understand it better. So there's nothing big that's been contested, I guess. Yeah.
I agree with the mayor. I think you guys take the heat on this, and maybe you haven't done a good enough explaining why this pass-through is so high. It's a result of the contract, but the Excel's the one who benefits from it, not you guys.
And I think some of our difficulty too is, even those invoices are confidential, so we can't, there's stipulations in the contract that we can't just hand out the monthly invoice, publicly. So
As I walked through their headquarters building or as I toured it this summer, I completely expected to get off on the executive suite and see some donor recognition up there on the wall and say, this is the Lubbock Power and Light executive suite. Maybe you have Mr. McCall and Mr. Taylor's pictures up there, like you do. But they weren't there.
Keep in mind too, these $4 million true-ups are super frustrating, especially, but it's 2% or less of our total purchase power cost, So in the scheme of things, it's not a huge number, but it is, I think the issue is that it's difficult to forecast, and it's difficult for us to roll into our customers' rates evenly. We're trying to keep the rates to our customers even, and of course we're taking on this volatility, which I think we should. That's where the rub is, for me especially, is that it would be nice to know, have a little bit more warning or heads up and anticipate these things. We try to do everything we can for our customers to anticipate something. It'd be nice if we got the same thing.
Everybody clear on what the rate's going to be beginning October 1st? So the energy rate, which is our base rate, will be 3.381 cents per kilowatt hour, and the purchase power recovery factor will be 7.458 cents per kilowatt hour.
That's correct. And again, that's for the rate one. Remember, every rate class has their own set rate, but this is the largest portion of our customers that are affected.
Right, that's residential.
Yeah,
Yeah.
again.
A couple of other questions. We're probably fixing to get into it, but basically the under collection at the end of July was $5,553,000.
Yes.
That's on our balance sheet as an asset, but it's effectively receivable that we collect in the future out of our funds, out of the rate stabilization.
You're correct.
So if I heard you right, at the end of August, that number's 3-something? Very good. See, if it went down by 2 million, but you're thinking at the end of September it's going to be 4.8, is that right?
It was it 4.8? Yeah. It should be 4.8 at the end of August.
Okay, so it'll go down by 700,000
Yes. Yes, sir.
for the month of August. That's stable, is what we think.
I thought your slide showed, I'm with you, I thought it showed that we collected by 2 million.
For all.
That was my question, and I just assumed nearly a doomsday scenario in September, and
Yeah.
just expecting the very, very worst.
The under collection as far as year end also has to deal with the tech contract as far as the true up for their contract. So that's also has been incorporated in that.
Okay, so we netted that in.
Yes. So that'll be in the September calculation. So
Okay.
that's what makes that difference.
Okay, that makes sense.
Sorry.
No, I'm just.
Good catch, though.
Just rubbing through.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, we got into this whole deal about utility bills earlier in the summer. If y'all look at the, you can pull this information off the city website on the economic demographic data, and I don't know exactly what all's in the utility index. I assume that's electricity, gas, water, all utilities that's in the city utility index. Through the third quarter of 2016, the city of Lubbock had the 4th lowest in the whole state. The only city ahead of Amarillo was ahead of us. They were 3rd. Then Conroe and Brazoria County, as far as statistical area locations. So we have a good story to tell. We're talking about, we need to increase rates to catch up with our purchase power recovery factor. But we have a good story to tell about the cost of living in the city of Lubbock. And having low utility rates is one of the real reasons why that's a good thing. I mean, so.
I agree, Mr. Taylor. Unfortunately, I've seen 17.
Yeah.
It's not a good, it's that, on that same number, it's all of a sudden you look a whole lot more like the Metroplex.
And I understand, because you can look at just the electricity part of that in this, in the deals that we do every month and see the advantage of where ERCOT really comes.
I think so too. I don't disagree.
So, it's so I guess I would explain it, we're moving from good to good, or good to good. If I can use my Crosby County grammar. So, any other questions on that? You're not finished, though.
No, just Chad's actually going to do the rest of the financial presentation on the balance sheet and income statement. So yeah, if y'all don't have any more questions on the pass through, I'll hand it off to Chad.
All right. talked about quite a bit today. Purchase power costs continue to be a lot higher than they have been in 15, 16. You can see that in the change in revenue, and then also in the change in purchase of fuel and power and the operating expenses. Net income this year compared to the same time last year is up $4.6 million. That's driven primarily by our base rate increase that was 5.75 in 16-17. Depreciation, which we've seen has been down all year long. That was due to the FERC study that we did, and we actually extended some useful lives based on industry standard, and then we also have retired some assets this year. And then the last one is it's not really built into this slide, but we'll see it later, is the power marketing. Bless you. The power marketing is up over $2.3 million compared to this time last year, and that's another one of those things that as we have got another year under our belt, we have learned more about it, and we've changed our run tags, which make those units more appealing to the market, and they've been struck a lot more often this year. But the other side of that is that you can see that fuel in the supplies budget is a little bit higher. So on the balance sheet, we talked about receivables being up. It's largely driven by higher pass-through costs, which mean higher bills, which means higher receivables. Part of that, as you know, if AR is up, cash is down. So we've got some of that going on here, but we anticipate that we will continue to collect as we always do at year end. Restricted investments are down $3.5 million. That's largely due to, or it's actually completely due to expenditures on capital projects, and you can see the net on our capital assets is actually down $1.6 million, and that's due to the fact that we're doing a lot of engineering right now on the T&D projects as we get ready to do the loops, the 2 loops in town. We'll begin to see that pick up as those projects get underway, and also as the CIS project gets underway. We'll be having quite a bit of CapEx show up here. On the liability side, AP in the due to is up $3.4 million. Part of that, since this is the July statement, part of that is the additional $1.1 or $1.2 million that was on the July invoice as the true up. And then the other part, as you know, AP can vary from month to month just based on what we have going on. So, but it is normal based on what we've got for this time of year. Customer deposits, if you'll recall, you all passed a deal to return customer deposits in the tariff based on certain criteria, and I believe at one point that number was above 6 million, and we ended last year a little over 5 million, and we've given back another 800,000. So in terms of debt, you can see that it's down over 16 million between short-term and long-term, and that's a result of our payments in February and August. But we issued, as you know, we did our bond issuance in August, and so that cash and the liability will show up on next month's statement. In terms of the budget, we like to compare our budget, where we're at budget year to date compared to how we finished the prior year budget to actuals. And so you can see our revenues are right on pace, within a percentage point of where they were last year overall. Continue to see off-system sales. This is where I was talking about purchase power is up significantly over last year, and within a percentage point on total expenses. So we continue to see the year track as we would expect. And then we do a forecast this time of year, and we just incorporate as much information as we have. So we basically take our annual financial model and break it down into a more granular look in terms of looking at it over 12 months. And this has some data through August as those costs and revenues have come in. It's not a full month of August, but this has changed about $100,000 from what we thought it was going to be last month. So forecast is still that we'll come in under budget, and even though revenues are a little under budget, costs are significantly under. As far as capital, we still have 56 open capital projects. We've got 31 million to spend. Obviously, this doesn't include the 19 million that we issued last month, but we've got 25 in bonds and 6.4 in cash. And then you can see the projects that we spent the most on in July. And so, future substation, 312,000, co-op, 220, the T&D, the 115 kV line. That goes back to what I was talking about earlier with a lot of the engineering going on with these projects for these two loops.
Chad, can I stop here?
Yeah, I'm actually, yeah.
So on the statement of cash flows, our CapEx year-to-date through 17 is 12.6. I know why I asked this question. That's what we've actually captured through CIP
Yes.
year-to-date, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as far as that slide you just put up there, as far as appropriated, my question is, where are we in the actual expenditure process compared to the overall budget? I think you had that on that slide. It's a little different number. Is that 15.6? Expenditure through July?
Yes. Yeah, 15.7.
Okay. Because I know at one time we were concerned, we were appropriating these CapEx in the budget, but we were sort of behind in getting everything started and actually
Right.
spending the funds. So.
And that's right. Isn't it, Andy, that there's a lag from when Kevin does the drawdowns and
Correct.
all of that?
There is, because the expenditures are made out of just pulled cash initially, and then there's a lag on getting the cash moved out of those capital projects, reimbursing back the pulled cash.
Yeah.
So there's always a little bit of a lag there.
Okay.
So it's a pretty manual process.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you gotta go item by item.
Yeah.
So, and we've issued, or we've paid down 18.7 million on bonds through July. But then we issued how many in August?
Right
About
at
the same?
It was right at about 19.
Yeah,
Okay.
with premium and everything.
Go ahead.
No, I didn't have anything else.
All right. So what we were talking about earlier on the budget expenditures, like page 24, the booklet, we got the legal 7113 administration. So we got 1.5 million in the budget.
Right.
661.
Right.
But then we got the difference there is down in supervision engineering 7611.
Yes, sir, that's correct. So we put the budget together. So this is the 16-17 budget. So this was put together a year and a half ago.
Early 16.
Yeah, early 16. So we didn't know, I guess at that time we thought we would be in a CCN case by now. So we thought it would be legal expenditures. So we put it in that bucket. But as you know, we're going to capture the costs with the appropriate account and cost center. So we have the budget in 7113, but the actual costs have been in 7611. And so you can see that Richard's cost center is about $900,000 under, whereas the supervision and engineering is, look at my math right, about 700,000 over, roughly.
We're fixing it.
So mostly, and the reason those are in the transmission and engineering supervision cost center is those have been transmission studies and load studies and power studies and that kind of stuff, so they weren't necessarily legal, so it wasn't proper to capture them in the legal cost center.
Other questions, comments, from Kurt?
Andy,
Yes, sir.
back to the purchase power recovery factor. I know that their administrative costs are embedded in their prices and everything else. We know what that is. But for my education, do we add anything on our own to cover our costs to that figure, or did we just strictly take care of it?
No, it's strictly just the invoice that we get from them is what's incorporated in that cost.
So that when you say it's a strictly pass-through cost, we're being accurate.
Yes, absolutely. The invoices, if you add them up, should equal the revenues that we're generating from our customers.
And you can see that if you look on the budget on page 24, the year-to-date figure in the budget for our purchase power revenue is 160 million. And you look down at purchase power, 7315, it's 160 million. I mean, that's what we're shooting for.
Yeah, it's within $6,000, which is really a rounding error.
Yeah.
And the only reason that rounding error is there is because we have to truncate the rate at some point.
And so, yeah, it's not like pie.
Right. Anything else?
Any other questions for Chad? Excellent, thank you, guys. So, that brings us to item number 9, consider a resolution recommending approval by the city council of the route of the transmission and distribution infrastructure be constructed from Northwest Substation to Quincy Substation as indicated on Exhibit A attached to the resolution under consideration. So let me stop right there. Everybody turn to that Exhibit A. I guess this is the first. Yeah, page 41. Okay. And then we'll, okay, Larry's going to lead off here.
Well, I was just going to add,
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Since that's a resolution, I need a motion. Motion by Mr. Bowman, second by Ms. Henry. Okay. Now discussion. First part of discussion will be a presentation of Mr. Gibbons.
Blair's going to walk through all the details of this item, but just to remind everyone, as we work through this process, we had meetings with Mayor Pro Tem Joy and Councilmember Chavez to walk through initially kind of what we were looking at in terms of the entire region with these routes. We worked closely with Black and Beach and held 2 public meetings in which we solicited public input and gave them avenues to put in comments on how they would be affected. Since that time, Black and Beach has been taking all of the comments and putting them into their model. We had quite a few right there at the very beginning, and we've had some come back through here in the last few weeks. But that's kind of, from a public standpoint, what drove what went into their model and how they kind of scored these different routes. Like I said, Blair's going to walk through the decisions they made. But just wanted to start off by kind of talking about what the public input was before we get to the decisions that were made.
Just want to kind of go over some of the highlights of this report. It's over 100 pages long, 110, 113 pages long, so I'm just going to hit on a few points, but you can see, as Chairman Taylor said, it's in your book, page 41, 42, page 42 actually. So just to kind of give you an introduction on what we're looking at is we're looking for a single circuit 115 kV transmission line, part of the infrastructure that will go from Northwest to McKenzie Station or substation, and this will complete the 115 kV loop that Chad mentioned earlier. There'll be a 115 outer, 69 inner. So this will complete the 115 kV outer loop around the city of Lubbock. So this will, drastically improve our reliability and our transmission capabilities, actually. LP&L retained the services of Black and Beach to assist and develop the routing study, which is what's in your book. The study provided a systematic and methodical process to evaluate the various route options. So we'll get into some of those options here in just a minute. The route selection process, although LPNL was not required to follow the standard Public Utility Regulatory Act process, the Texas Administrative Code process, we did. And the reason for that is to somewhat standardize the process, so it's defendable. Variety of resources used to identify constraints and avoidances within the 13 square mile area. And that developed the preliminary desktop route that Black and Veatch came up with. The desktop routes were broken into segments to be evaluated by the 34 environmental and the 25 infrastructure evaluation factors. So there's 59 factors total for what was evaluated. During the detailed portion of the segment study, some of the considerations that were taken into effect were, the federal, state, and local agencies. You'll see some of the abbreviations there. There's a Fish and Wildlife, the Army Corps of Engineers, the FAA, FEMA, TCEQ, and there was probably 20, so I didn't want to list them all. So there were field investigations. Black and Veatch came out to the field and drove the routes, and I would probably say they drove them more than once. They did a very thorough investigation. Some of the environmental evaluations, some of the what the land was used for, what type of wildlife observations. They counted the number of birds that they saw on certain sections and that type of thing. Parks and the historical sites were evaluated. Local stakeholders, as Matt mentioned earlier, the public meetings that were held on July 18th and 19th, there were 310 letters that sent out to anyone that was affected by a 300, whatever the determination of the center line of that route or that segment was. It ended up that there were 310 invitations letters to 300. There were 310 letters or 310 people that were affected by from the center line to 300 feet out of that transmission segment. That's too many 300s in there. Habitat structures, single and multiple family dwellings, hospitals, nursing homes, schools. There was a list of those. Those are just some of the important ones. Infrastructure evaluations, how many airports, airstrips, irrigation systems, electronic installations were taken into account. Whether it was 10,000 feet from an airstrip or 20,000 feet from an airstrip. With that evaluation, the preliminary route came up with 32 route segments. A lot of you have seen this map that shows the 32 segments. They're labeled, A, B, C, D. They were broken into two different sections. They were from northwest to XFAB, which is in this area. So northwest to XFAB, and then from XFAB over to McKenzie Substation. The scoring methods that were used, there was a couple of different times that they were scored on the 59 factors. You see a raw score in this column. There's a weighted score where the 16 routes were selected. They were given more scrutiny with a finer detail. The ultimate routes that were selected were the NX4. If you'll see the top 5, NX4, it has the lowest score on the raw and the weighted, so that is the #1 pick. The bottom 11 are from XFAB to McKenzie. It ended up being XM3 at 3.1, or 3.81 miles. XM3, it had the fourth best score in the raw category, but once the finer detail was applied, it had the number one score. And with that, that is the final route selection. As Matt said, we had several different, a couple of different meetings with Councilwoman Joy and Councilman Chavez to make sure that, they were in touch with their constituents and everybody was well informed.
Mr. McCollum,
Go back to that, Matt.
Yes, sir.
There are two issues that I wanted to point out. One is we're going to be crossing in front of the Burl Hoffman complex. So Councilwoman Joy has requested that we allow for, there's going to be a road entrance off of the loop into that parking somewhere.
Hopefully a curb cut.
And a curb cut. So she's asked that we avoid that curb cut with our pole placement, and we've agreed to do that. So we'll work on that. And then right there where that F is, just as we come across the Clovis Highway, that is on the Lubbock landmark site. The National Park Service has just recently become engaged on this project, even though we requested their participation months ago. And they want to look at some potential design considerations that they, I don't think it's a deal killer for us to go across there because we're really staying in the roadway and not in any areas that are subject to excavation or having value in terms of the archaeology there. But they may want to suggest certain design parameters, and I think we can cover these. Should be one of those two things.
yes, there's a lot.
But you currently have lines,
We do. We have smaller rooms there.
smaller lines going down towards the complex, right?
What type of construction are we talking about here? A-frame, single pole, or what?
It's going to be steel poles with horizontal post insulators on them. I think there's some structure drawings in the.
There are. It'll be monopole steel construction with a weathered look. They'll either be,
50 and 51 shows the different structure.
they'll either be encased in concrete or,
Yeah, it's most likely it'll be the weathering, rusty looking steel.
Do they come with graffiti already on them?
No, it's optional.
But it will be the same from end to end. Same stuff.
Blair, I guess just observing that route, I guess as much of that as possible is on land that's in a highway or roadway type easement already.
they did try to mirror the text dot. It won't be on text dot right of ways, but it'll be
It'll be
right next to it.
next to it, parallel to it.
Yes, sir. Also sections HH and JJ, there's already a transmission line in this area that is going to be rebuilt, so we're going to utilize
And that's
that action.
Avenue Q that is kind of diagonally crossing that. Is that where it goes to the Canyon Rear Parks, that Avenue Q on the between HH and JJ.
Yes,
Okay.
right through here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to word it.
Numbers two. You have 5 railroad crossings, have they been involved in this?
We already have railroad crossings or permits in 1, 2, 3, 3 of the areas. 1, 2.
I think I counted 5.
Is that BNSF line or is that FICO's line?
I'm not sure. I believe it's BNSF.
Probably outside the loop there, that on the parallels closest highway is probably being itself, but somewhere in there, Pico has a switching to it.
I just asked because sometimes railroads can get a little snippy about their right of ways.
Yes.
Is that why it didn't go north and south along that one?
That's probably one of the bigger reasons.
The one of your proposals that showed it as.
Yeah. You can see the Y route came down. Any other questions?
You said there were 300, is that 300 separate property owners, or?
There were initially 310 property owners that owned property within 300 feet of the center line.
Okay.
That's been narrowed down significantly.
That was the original project area. You can see it's a huge area. So they sent notices to everybody that was within 300 feet of that line. Of course, now we're talking about a fairly narrow stretch of that overall property.
So what kind you want?
That's 48. 101, page 101.
Oh. Yeah, okay.
That was the study boundary. We ruled out some of that area pretty quickly based on feedback that we got from enjoying about this neighborhood concerns and things like that, where it really wasn't practical to build in certain areas.
I do know that the mayor wanted that to follow the loop as much as it could, so that's satisfied.
How far apart are those poles?
Anywhere from 5 to 600 feet.
Feet would be about a 10 mile.
600 feet.
Less than 10 miles.
Yeah. I think it's football field. It's a first step.
That park is Fox Run in 30 seconds.
Okay, anything, is that all the presentation on the resolution?
That's it. We might just mention that we're asking the board to recommend this route to the city council, because we will have it on the council agenda this September 28th.
This is an extensive list of, the Black and Beach study recommending that route and all the stuff that they went through in that. And then all the letters, contacting the different.
I really thought they did a good job of balancing out the interest and trying to minimize the impact and keep the costs as low as possible. They were very sensitive to feedback from council members as well as the citizens that came to those public meetings that they talked to after the fact. So I think they did a good job of balancing the interest. There's never a perfect route that doesn't cause any impacts to anybody.
Right.
You just can't do that with the transmission lines, but I thought they did a good job on this one.
They did change a couple of the segments after the open house, the meetings, based on the comments from the public.
They did alter some of that.
Yes.
Other questions?
I was gonna ask that if they were happy with it.
Yeah. Are y'all are
We're satisfied with this.
Mr. Carter, then if we approve this resolution, this would be our recommendation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then they can trot that through the state or.
Our intention is to have, I'm sorry, our intention is to present that driving study at the work session of September 28th in the council. But do the action item on the consent agenda because it hasn't been complicated with that issue, of course.
All right, other questions, comments? Okay. All those in favor of the resolution recommending this route, please raise your hand. Okay. Thank you, guys. Opposed, all those changes that were. We approved it. All right, let's take up item 10. Consider resolution approving the delegation of authority and recommended adoption by the city council of the delegation of authority to the Director of Electric Utilities to act for and on behalf of the city of Lubbock to make offers to purchase, to contract for, and to close transactions for real property interests related to the Northwest Substation, to McKenzie Substation Transmission and Distribution Project. Put that on the floor, entertain a motion. To approve by Mr. Bell, second by Mr. Bowman. Okay, now we've got it on the table.
Didn't we do this once before?
We tabled it or removed it.
Yes, sir. It was, I'll set this up, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. Several months ago, we presented the delegation authority in connection with the proposed purchase of the Slocum substation site. And there was discomfort as far as the timing of the delegation, and the board's pleasure was to pursue the acquisition of the Slocum substation tract outside of this delegation, which we have done. The motion made by the board, motion that was passed by the board, was to continue this item until we brought the value study back to the board. So we have it here, and we've made a few changes, and because it's been a while since we brought this to the board, let us talk for a minute, if y'all don't mind, about what the delegation does and what it doesn't do, and also the changes of the resolution made since it was first presented to the board. First, and I apologize for the size of that, you'll note that the resolution that the board is presented with approves the attached resolution, which is the resolution that we considered by the city council. That is the resolution that's up on the screen. Please note that the first thing that we did in this first red line is we clarified that the delegation would apply only to the Northwest and McKenzie transmission line project. You'll see it's defined as the electric project, and then later defined as the electric facilities. Next page, you have it. The first resolution is that the city council finds that public interest requires the acquisition of the necessary real property for those electric facilities. Those are defined as the property interest. Secondly, the board resolves that David or his designee are authorized to make, on behalf of the city of Lubbock, offers to purchase a property interest in the amount of the total compensation amount. From the previous page, you'll notice that is the amount that is found by the certified appraiser for the value of the property interest that is to be acquired and the damages to the remainder of the owner's property. So there is absolutely no delegation or no discretion in the delegation authority provided to David or his designees to make offers. Further, the resolution allows David to settle certain amounts or settle property on counter offers, the greater of $100,000, which will come into play on some of the smaller tracts, or 20% in excess of the total compensation amount for values between $100,000 and $500,000. We had $750 in there before. but that was to anticipate the Slayton substation track, which you'll recall is around $615,000 on total compensation. So note here, there is no discretion on the offer. In that paragraph, there is discretion in settling counteroffers, but within defined parameters. The closing costs are not included in the values, and if there is no substation track or feed track required in this Northwest to McKenzie final design, those amounts will be significantly lower than 500, I would suspect. David is authorized to execute contracts so long as they're in conformity with the delegation provided and the form and substance agreed to by your general counsel and your director. And any other documents necessary to close the transactions contemplated by the agreements, which is how we anticipate this is most of these settlement statements, things of that nature. Added provision, the board wished that David report back to the board any actions that he took under the delegation. You can see here there's a monthly, at least monthly requirement of reporting those activities. One other thing that we put in here is that this is not a required delegation of authority. If at any time David doesn't wish to act under the delegation, he doesn't have to. He can bring it back through the board and the city council. Okay. So basically what this delegation does is it delegates authority to David to make initial offers based on the total compensation amount, which is what is prescribed in the certified closing. No discretion. It grants authority to David to settle and compromise counteroffers within those parameters that we talked about, $100,000 or 20% above for offers for counties within 105. So there is some discretion within those defined parameters. It authorizes David to execute contracts and to close transactions that are contracted to him under his delegation authority. And it requires David to come back and report monthly of all activities taken under the delegation. And it does not prescribe or require David to act under the delegation even if it's within his parameters. All of those are tied to property interests necessary for the Northwest McKenzie Line project.
I know since this is the first time that I recall since I've been on the board, had an issue. It's kind of big one since I'm not familiar with the process. So I'm just going to throw out a couple questions and naturally throw it in. Sure. We may have covered this a couple of months ago. So normally our expenditure authorization approval is the $100,000. So how much of this, we're talking about easements for the most part, not actual purchases of property. So what does that usually entail? We impinge their use of their property because of the airline over there?
Yes, the appraisal in most instances will have a value for the actual property interest taken, the easement estate. And typically that is some percentage of the fee simple value. Above ground, typically more so than underground. I don't know what the appraiser will assign to these, and it may even be different depending on different areas. And secondly, when you're taking less than an entire estate, either in fee less than a whole tract or an easement situation, there is a possibility of damages to the remainder of the owned property. And that will be also appraised and included in that mandatory offer, which is required by statute that your offers be in
populate the number for it properly according to the law.
Don't have, David's got that, don't have to start
You
over.
didn't muddy the water by
Making this sub-value offer that could be contested when you get the.
And David's right, and interestingly, the law does not require the initial offer to be based on the certified price. My recommendation has been always do so, because the final offer has to be. And if you're not doing that, what are you basing your initial offer on? And it's just better, especially if you're really low on an initial offer, not out of meanness or anything else, but if you miss it, then come back with the final and it's a lot higher. Then it leaves a little bit of a bad taste in folks' mouth. Even a worse taste in mouth, you come back with one that's lower.
Well, and it's only right if you're doing the citizens of the property. You should try to figure it out.
Fair market value.
Is there one large owner, or like going north, is it a bunch of people and then there's one swath along like the north loops, or is it just scattered stuff all around there?
Brighton Beach has not generated a property owner list matrix for these tracks. I don't know. I'm hopeful that we're talking about larger tracks, less owners.
I think it was one of the evaluation factors of the number of tracks per segment. I think that's in the table there. I don't remember exactly what line it is. But, anyway, they've identified the number of tracks that will be crossing on each line segment, and we just don't have to list the landowner and use property identification on it.
We will, when it's approved, we'll ask them to assemble that. And y'all recall that the contract with Black and Beach on this deal, kind of on a soup to nuts basis. And as we've talked to them about the fact that we would like to approve certain aspects of this, certain professionals like surveyors, outside counsel, Black and Beach has indicated that at least in one instance, we're still talking about the surveyor, but in one instance, they wanted, if we selected the outside counsel, they wanted us to manage that contract. And we're fine with doing that. In fact, it will eliminate Black and Beach's multiplier on managing outside contracts. So we're very happy and satisfied with doing that.
As far as the upper bound, so to speak, does that, since that is a defined process, and I'll just ask the question, does the upper bound amount give y'all any heartburn as far as, do you want amounts that are smaller than that to come back to, or do you want to lower the upper bound, or do you want amounts that are more than our normal $100,000 that have to come back and get
Jerry,
I don't mean monthly report.
well, that's what I was gonna say. From my understanding, the last conversation we had is we had given him that authority, but he was gonna report back.
This resolution says monthly.
I just want to make sure I've asked the question, because the amount is more than, the upper bound is more than our normal purchase approval. Even though this is a completely different process, that really wouldn't strictly be related to that RFP purchase process. Just to make sure you're all clear. Yes,
I'm still not crystal clear on why the city has to resolve. You know, it talks about that eminent domain is not part of this, so under the 4 areas that the city council oversees this board, I'm still not really clear on why this is necessary. Number one, if we do need to go to eminent domain, the council would have to approve it. And because of that, and because that the real property interest will be acquired only by the city, it's just much cleaner, much simpler, and I think probably correct, Mr. Bell, that the council did the fact that the party authorizing eminent domain actually made those offers, and that those offers were authorized, and that everything was copacetic on all the statutory steps needed to go to the operation. We as a board, under some parts of the law, I don't understand, like, we don't have the authority to actually purchase ground. Is that part of this?
I'm not sure that that's a correct statement, but I'm not sure that it is either. It has been at least our practice that when the contract for a purchase real property, that this board approves that, and then it goes to council to authorize it. That's the cleanest, neatest, and what we've done in the past. Yes, sir, and it's for sure good. If we did it the other way, maybe it's not for sure good.
None of this will be purchased.
Well, it'll be easements that are purchased.
Well, that's right, it doesn't require ownership of the land.
It requires ownership and real property interest less than a fee.
Well, the footprint, where the post,
Right, and within the easement boundaries, we will own an estate, an easement estate within those boundaries.
Mr. Chairman, just back on the previous question, if you look at the top of page 83, that first line item there is number of land parcels crossed. And so if you look at MX4, which is recommended for the first part, there's 26 parcels crossed, and XN3 had 59. So the second leg of that line actually has probably among the highest number of parcels for any of the routes. The first tracks that land had the fewest parcels. I know it was a factor they looked at, but there were other offsetting factors that probably caused that still to be the highest evaluated factor.
XN3 is 59 parcels.
Right. And I think when you get back into the industrial area, there's a lot of parcels that you go past.
Yeah.
There's crossing a lot of parcels, even though you may know the road there.
But based on that 300 number that went out the letters, that was before the actual 26 parcels.
Yes, sir. That was the entire boundary.
It's down now to 26 parcels.
If those preliminary numbers are right, we're looking at 80 to 100 tracks. Those are reactions for this archaeological sites that are required to be kept confidential. Anybody who wants to see them, follow it.
We can show you, we just can't make it public, so we can put it open document.
I can go to Halifax and get it.
Hey, my social security number too, right?
All right, so everybody clear on the resolution and what it entails? I think this is the right way to do this, handling that separate deal on the south side of town, a separate deal, covering this with a blanket resolution. That's my personal opinion. So if there's not any other questions for David or Richard, and y'all don't have any other comments, then I'll say, all those in favor of the resolution, please raise your hand. Okay. Any opposed? That's everybody. Then we'll go to item 11. Consider resolution ratifying action of the City Council of the City of Lubbock related to a mutual aid agreement which allows for the provision of electric utility aid to requesting signatories that have suffered catastrophic damage as contemplated in the mutual aid agreement, and further authorizes the execution of separate agreements with such requested signatories in form and substance as provided in the ratification under consideration. Get that on the floor, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. Odom, second. Second by Ms. Henry.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I could, there's been some consternation expressed as to exactly how this matter is before the board now. And that is, it was presented to and adopted by the city council at their meeting on the 14th.
Okay.
There's been some issues, there's some questions and some uncertainties as to whether that was in the council jurisdiction. And let me explain my opinion. First, due to the budget year crossover between when this is going to be passed and when reimbursement will occur. And that's even assuming 100% reimbursement of credit.
Yes, the same cycle.
Yes, it's highly unlikely. As such, I think that there would be some budget authority there by the city council. Secondly, although the charter and the ordinance that was adopted pursuant to the charter is not perfectly clear, it appears to me that the intent of the electric utility board's jurisdiction of those governing documents was for the operation of LPL as an electric utility for the municipality within its certificate, which are mutual aid non-aid. So I think due to those two reasons, my recommendation to David and Andy is to present this to city council and pass, and then bring it back to the board for ratification. That's why it's before the board there. That precedent.
Did I hear you say the council's already approved?
Yes, sir. They approved it on the 14th. And the resolution presented to the board to ratify this in the council's action.
Let me explain why we did it in that order, because it's not the normal way that we would do it. We were anticipating being able to send crews to Florida on Friday of last week. So we had the opportunity to, the last minute, we were able to get on the council and so we could take action on the next Thursday. As it turns out, we're not sending any crews to Florida because they, in some calls late last week, they determined that they had enough manpower, 60,000 linemen already in Florida. They really were running out of facilities to house them, ability to gas that many trucks, and, feed and take care of that many people. Plus, they thought they had enough resources to manage the event by moving crews around as they finished one area. And we were a long ways away as well, so they appreciated our offer, but they declined to have any more outside line crews coming in late in the week like that. So that's the only reason we went to council first before coming forward like we normally do.
But the reason to council at all is understood is that we may have a budget year crossing, where we'll spend money, but we may not get it back the next year. Since the council has to approve our budget, we're just being completely transparent.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I believe it's, even though that Florida doesn't need us now, this mutual aid agreement will allow us to enter into mutual aid deals on an emergency basis when we need to. Now on contract forms that are approved by the general counsel, the city attorney, and the city risk manager.
But this is exclusive to Irma, if I read
It
this.
recites it. That's why it's being presented, is because of the catastrophic damage to Irma. That the actual approval of the agreement itself does not.
It's not specific to just that.
I apologize for
Approved is not specific.
I'm sorry.
What the council approved is not specific to Irma.
No.
Just the agreement itself is generic.
It's being presented because of Irma, but the mutual aid agreement is a standalone contract.
No, this is a very good thing to have. Because it works both ways. We may want to help sometimes.
You're right, Mr. Bowman, and there is in our files an executed mutual aid agreement now that's been around for quite some time, but we could not find it was ever authorized.
So even though there's language in there specifically talks about Irma, it's green enough. It's broad enough that if something happens with the next hurricane or the one after, we can still respond without going through this exercise.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In retrospect, probably should not have put Irma in there, but should have put catastrophic damage due to storms or other natural disasters. But Irma was what brought it up. But mutual aid agreement is it's a standalone mutual aid.
Is it necessary for us to consider amending our motion?
Certainly could.
How do we take this off the table now?
You have an addendum to the.
You could have a friendly, you could ask for a friendly amendment, or whoever made the motion could amend the motion with the consent of the seconder second whereas paragraph.
I amend my motion,
We didn't talk to the council.
Well, I think all you need to do is put a period after cooperative electric utilities. On that sentence.
Steve may have covered this question, but if the amended portion, if we, I guess, agree to the amended portion, does it have to go back to the city council?
I think, it's my opinion, it's just that simple recital, and that the actual action of the city council is clean. I think everything.
You say we're probably agreeing to two different things.
It's changing your recital on why you are ratifying the council action.
We can't amend that, can we? Because then it would be different from what the city council has approved.
That's what
It's okay. It's on.
that's what I'm.
It's sure. Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, so basically, it's just a technical change, where we're removing that related to damage anticipated caused by Hurricane Irma, and moving the city colon up to after utilities.
That's true. The council action stands on its own. Ratification of the council action is taken care of in this resolution under the be it resolved part. We can't change what the council did, but that's a mere recital. And if y'all's comfort level is to clarify that at least your belief on ratifying this because of natural disasters and not Irma, that's fine.
I just didn't want somebody to come back later if we send somebody off and somebody 3 years from now comes back and say, wait a minute.
One thing, Mr. Bell, is for the sake of certainty, there was nothing that would prevent us from asking the council to amend our action in the first meeting in October.
What do you recommend?
You know, I'm your conservative lawyer. It's cleaner if you do that. I think it's okay, but it's cleaner if you do that.
So you will make the motion, you have to amend the motion.
No, he's already made an amended motion. Jane. So Jane agrees to the amendment, which I'm going to state again, is on the resolution, the second paragraph. I'll just read it. Whereas the American Public Power Association has approached LPNL regarding the potential provision of aid to other municipal and cooperative electric utilities, CIMICO. Whereas the city council authorized the mayor of the city of Lubbock, et cetera, et cetera. That's quite sufficient. Okay, all those in favor of that resolution, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, very good. So now we can take up the consent agenda, which before we get into that, understand item 15, we're going to remove item 15 from the consent agenda because that is really is not quite right. So scratch out 15, and then I'll go through these.
That's really related to Cooper delay as well.
So I'll go through these. Item 12, consider resolution authorizing the director to execute contract for services by and between the city of Lubbock, acted by and through Lubbock Fire and Light, Veolia ES Technical Solutions LLC for services related to regulated waste handling, on-site storage, and disposal services. Stop right there and ask, does anybody want any of the other items pulled from the consent agenda before I read them? Okay.
Do we have to read them all? Other organizations I've been in, it wasn't necessary.
It's-
We have to, yeah.
I think the answer is no, but it has been a back to pattern and practice, at least paraphrasing the items all.
Item 13.
Lord Recording Secretary.
Consider resolution authorizing the purchasing manager to execute a purchase order to Texas Electric Cooperatives for 500K CM 15 kV copper cable. Item 14, consider resolution authorizing the purchasing manager to execute a purchase order as concerns line item 1 to Nixter Power Solutions, as concerns item 6, EUB Utilities, as concerns line items 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, and 10, and 11. Wesco Distribution, as concerns line item 2 and 8, Texas Electric Cooperatives, and LPNL, for LPNL Distribution Transmission 7141117 ELD. And then item 16, consider resolution authorizing the director or designee to execute and deliver notice of termination of that certain electronic payment services agreement by and between Crescent Systems LLC and the city of Lubbock, acting by and through LPNL dated on or about May 16, 2006, as amended, related to the provision of electronic payment services by Crescent to LPNL.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exclusion of item 15, which has been approved.
Okay. Second by Mr. Bowman. Motion by Mr. Bowman. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, any opposed? Very good. So that brings
On,
us,
on the next agenda, I'd like a resolution to purchase rubber wheels for that car.
The man's on his job.
I better rub the floor.